Well, we're back again this week with a new guest. Kevin Gearheart is with us. As we like to do at the beginning of every episode, Kevin, would you be so kind to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. Appreciate you having me on. Name's Kevin Gearhart. I am the president and I'm one of the partners of Rehab Medical. Rehab Medical is a mobility medical equipment device company. Really what we do is we provide mobility solutions, wheelchairs for patients that have some sort of a neurological disorder or spinal cord injury. Headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. We have a presence in 17 states. We are just now crossing over the 600 employee threshold and looking at ways to continue to grow our business.
Kevin, as we were talking, before we did this interview, we were talking all about the founder journey and how in many instances it is dramatized, it's hyped up, it's made to look easy in the eyes of folks who aren't in it. Because they don't really appreciate what it took to get to where you are. So what I want to do is if we can rewind the clock, to however many years ago, insert the number and how you got involved in the business to start with.
Yeah, so I've been with the company for 12 years and, kind of an interesting journey to get here. I was, my background, undergrad, telecom technology, went and got my MBA. I ended up getting into healthcare and I was running a retail optical chain for about 5 years. And from there, really just wanted to try and get some ownership opportunities. And so, this opportunity came about and really what it was a business that was running and the current CEO was one of the partners there and they just decided they want to split the business in two. Really, our CEO said, hey, and so when he approached me, it was, hey, we've got a business, we've got some sales, but if we split this thing in two, we have nothing else. And so truly, we were left with about 7, 8 offices that had some sales, but nothing else in terms of back office support. And so really it was, hey, let's try and, kind of build this airplane while it's in the air. And that was kind of the opportunity that I saw and kind of how we got into the business together in terms of becoming a partnership.
And why? If I recall, from what I've read and watched, you went back to business school at Indiana. Why did you want to buy a business?
Yeah, great question. I think what helped me was I was running a family business. And, I think I really just gained a level of confidence that, hey, I can do this. I can run a business. I understand a lot of the components of running a business, of operating a business. And so for me, there's also a level of, I want to be involved. I don't mind risk. And so I think it was kind of a lot of things coming together of I'm okay with risk. I want to have a seat at the table. I want to be able to kind of direct the building of something. And I felt like I could do it. And so for me, it just became something where I said, hey, I really want to try and do this. And I just became something that I knew I had to go tackle.
So risk. So how do you define risk? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know, honestly. I think risk to me is probably what are you willing to do and what are you willing to lose? I think is probably how I would define risk. And I think for me, what am I willing to do? I'm willing to do anything. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And that's kind of, my mindset and personality is, just whatever it takes to win, whatever that definition is, in terms of what am I willing to lose? I think that's a really tough question. And I think that becomes something that everyone needs to look inward and say, hey, what am I truly willing to lose and risk, whether it's money, whether it's time? I think those are probably the two most important things that people should be willing to lose. Beyond that, I don't think you should ever be willing to risk your ethics or your morals. So I don't think those are on the table for me. But I think there's some level of, hey, what am I willing to put on the table to make something happen? And am I prepared to do that?
So 12 years ago, you were single with a family,
married with one child at the time. Yeah. So, you talk about risk. It's not just what are you willing to risk, right? It's what is your family willing to support you and risk as well. A big part of the equation for sure.
And you come home and you say, hey, honey, this is something I'm going to do. This is something I want to do. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's this is something I have to do. And I think for me, it was, I'm willing to take some risk because I feel like if I don't make this move, I will always have some level of regret. And my wife, God love her, she's so supportive. Obviously she's very supportive of that move, and she knows that I'm gonna make sure I do everything I can to make it happen. But it was interesting because when I when I came home and said, hey, I'm going to do this, and then I went and told, my employer at the time, hey, I'm leaving for this opportunity, he really threw a lot at me. Hey, I'm going to pay you more money. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to do this. And so I come home and I told my wife and I said, hey, I put in my notice and here's what he said and here's what he was offering me. And she's like, well, that's fantastic. It sounds like you're going to stay, huh? I was like, no. And she's like, why not? And I think for me, it just came down to I had to take that risk. And I think knowing what's important to me was creating an opportunity to prove myself and to be able to be an integral part of building something bigger than myself. And I knew that if I didn't take that risk and make that move, that at some point I would look back and have a little regret. And then so, again, my wife is amazing, very supportive. And she's like, great, sounds like you have your answer. Let's go do this. And so
okay.
she's,
All
again,
right. So
I think
she's holding your hand, supporting you the whole way.
Yeah, very important, very important.
So we get involved in the business and you show up day one. What happens next?
It's a disaster. I mean, it's
more so than you thought it was.
More so, you just can't even really picture it. And I think, my partner, he told me up front, he was very upfront. Hey, this is the challenge. I can't guarantee anything. I don't know if we're going to be he was very upfront, almost to the point of making sure I knew that this could go poorly and that I had to make a really, firm commitment. And so I appreciate that from him. But I think, coming in, it's like, hey, we got to rip this company in two, and we got to start over with, all new infrastructure, IT, HR, accounting. I mean, we had no back office, anything. We had a couple of people that were splitting over. And so really trying to figure out how do we support this business while it's running and not break it. And so that was a really big challenge early on. And it took us a number of years to get settled in. And again, the reason we split was because, our CEO wanted to have a new product focus and really shift the product, that we were selling. And so not only did we have to start over, but we also shifted a large part of what we were selling. And so that was a lot of challenges early on. I mean, it took us a good 4 or 5 years to get stabilized and have some level of confidence that, hey, we can actually do this.
But how did you have the confidence to make that move when you didn't have the confidence that the product would take?
Part of it was, and it's, you're getting into a lot of the details of healthcare, but there was a lot of changes at that time in terms of, reimbursement, cost cuts. I mean, so it was almost a necessity of, hey, if we don't do this, I don't know that this company will remain in business. So we truly had to force ourselves into that box and say, hey, we're going to sell this product and we're going to go out and market in a whole new way in terms of what we're doing. And so it was a forced necessity. I think there was a lot of hard decisions at that time that were made because we knew we had to make those decisions. And then it's just an iterative process of, okay, try this, didn't work, try this, didn't work. You talk about failing fast. It's how quickly can we figure some things out and iterate until we get to a level of success. And then once we find a plan that works, how do we build a repeatable, scalable model from there?
Sounds like partially a mindset and partially getting the team together. How do you prepare yourself to know that you're going to fail at first until you succeed? And when that succeed is going to happen, success is going to happen.
Good question. I think a lot of it is, a little bit of confidence in just yourself, right? You're betting on yourself that you're going to figure it out. I think it's also just surrounding yourself with the right people that are going to have the same grit and just focus that you have to say, hey, I'm not going to allow myself to fail, right? I may make a mistake. I may fail in this short-term issue, but long-term, we are going to keep fighting through until we find something that works. And it's just truly a confidence that, hey, we're not the smartest guys in the room, but I can tell you, we're willing to outwork about anybody, and we've got enough intelligence to figure out that, hey, we're going to come up with something that works and we'll find a solution. No, I was going to say, I think every entrepreneur, you think about, what it takes to be an entrepreneur. You almost have to have that mindset of just a blind confidence in yourself that, hey, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to put in the effort and I'm going to surround myself with people and tools to get the job done. That, if there was a guarantee and you needed a guarantee, nothing would ever be created, right? It's just people that say, hey, I'm going to do it and I'm going to figure it out. And, if I fail a little bit, fine, but I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to ultimately fail. I'm going to continue to work until I find a solution.
But you needed the help of others. It wasn't yourself on an island. So how are you able to get that message across to others to come along on the boat with you?
Yeah, I think it's, and this is probably one of the most important parts of building a business is just finding the right people and finding the right fit. You have to find people that have an aligned mindset with you of, hey, I'm willing to do this, and I'm not going to let, something stop me. Hurdles are going to come up, but I'm going to go over them, or I'm going to go through them. And I think it's truly just making sure that you find the right people on that trip with you that are going to be aligned, and they're going to drive and row in the same direction. I think that's one of the most important things of any business. I don't care how big or small. You got to find the right people, and then you got to get them in the right seats.
When you talk about these hurdles, I think, when we've been talking in the past, it was people don't really appreciate all those hurdles along the way. So can you help paint a picture for an audience about your business specifically, and the hurdle and a hurdle or two that you were faced along the way early on that you overcame? The goal is to really try to capture the essence of the challenge.
Yeah, and I think there's two challenges there, and you talked about one of them, and is, to give an idea, our business over the last 7 years has grown an average of 27% every single year. We have a very consistent, clear growth strategy, and we implement it, and we're growing very, very aggressively, but not breaking, right? And we're doing it with a lot of organic growth. And so for 7 years straight, we've had great, consistent growth. And so, people that come in the business now, they just assume that's what it is, right? Well, we're just going to grow 25% a year because that's what we do. And so one of the challenges is getting them to understand that this didn't happen overnight. Like I said, it took us 5 years to get to the point before we even really grew at all. And so I think one of the challenges is getting people to understand what it took to get here. And I think that's really hard if you haven't been a part of that journey, to truly understand and comprehend what it takes. In terms of the struggle of getting here, good example, and this is one of the things that we really, you talk about failing fast. So we decided to switch our product mix, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to go into these seating clinics, and we're going to start selling into these clinics because this new product mix is has a good amount of patients that are going in there. And then we just, we're a great sales team. We're just going to go in there and magically just sell, right? Well, we go into these seating clinics, and all of a sudden we get hit with, basically these therapists are saying, well, why on earth would I work with you? You've never done this before. I've been working with Joe over here for 20 years, and I trust him. I know him. We have rapport. And so all of a sudden, this great scheme that we had as far as how we were going to go to market, and we run into this just brick wall. And it's like, well, that was dumb, right? That's not going to work. We can't do it that way. And so I think that was probably our big first hurdle of like, oh no, this is not the right, go to market approach. And so again, quickly realizing that, having a feedback loop of, hey, this is the challenges that we're getting. And instead of trying to continue to bang our head against that wall, we just came up with a new solution and a new methodology in terms of who we were marketing to and who we're selling to. And so it's defined our approach, and now we have a whole strategy built around that, which we never would have if we didn't run into that wall. And I think it's allowed us to be very successful and grow quickly. But man, was that a struggle, and was that just a punch in the mouth, right? When we're like, oh, we got this great plan, and let's go. We do this massive national sales training, and we roll it out, and then just, nope, that's not going to work. And so, that's just a good example of challenges that we faced, and then quickly having to regroup and say, hey, now what? Because that's clearly not going to be the solution.
So to me, that the first thing I think of is, well, you've just spent a lot of money. You've spent a lot of money on something that turned out to be a zero. So, yeah. And money's not endless and unlimited. How do you do that, right? Because you either went to market and you raised some money, or you bootstrapped your way. So which way did you choose?
Yeah, so it's interesting is we bootstrapped the entire way. And it's funny, we talk about it now where, people want to invest in our business and give us money, and we're like, we don't need it. And it's different because a lot of people, fund their business through investors. And the reason we don't need it is, and we don't have any debt, is because no one would give us money early on, right? So nobody would give us money. So we just figured out, hey, we got to figure this out, and we've got to bootstrap it. And we're gonna do everything from operating cash flow and figure it out from there. And so, some hard choices, we made some really tough decisions along the way because it was, our money, and you make a lot of different decisions when it's your money, and when it runs out, you don't have any other choices. So I think that forced us to be a little bit, gritty in the way we've approached things, but it definitely has served us well, and it's placed us in a great position now as a company.
What does hard decisions mean? What were some of those hard decisions?
Yeah, I'll tell you. One of them was, I told you there was price compression and there was reimbursement changes in the healthcare model, and the way we used to compensate our sales reps was when they would deliver equipment, they would get a commission. And we realized that, it basically went from the main product we were selling, it went from a purchase model to a rental model. So instead of getting reimbursed one time in one lump sum, you're getting paid out over 13 months. Well, you can only imagine what that does to your cash flow. And so we realized that we had to change our compensation model to where we would pay them commission based on payments received instead of deliveries made. And when we made that decision, I remember, rolling that out to our VP of sales and our national sales trainer, and the looks on their faces were just like, this is not going to fly. I don't know what this is going to do. And there was a lot of pushback and a lot of, hey, we can't do this, and here's what's going to happen, and we're going to lose all these sales reps. And the short answer was, it doesn't matter. We have to make this decision because we don't have another choice. And yes, we're going to lose sales reps, and we're going to get through it. And it is what it is. And so when we rolled it out, we immediately lost probably 25 to 30% of our sales force overnight.
How many people was that?
At the time, we probably had a 40 to 50 person sales force.
Wow.
And so we immediately lost, a good chunk of people. And I think eventually probably 50 to 60% of them left over the next 6 to 8 months. And, I understood it completely. It's like, hey, listen, you're going to make a major change to my compensation structure. If I have to start over, I'm going to start over somewhere else as opposed to starting over here. And I get it. It's hard to get over that. For a lot of people. And for us, we knew we had to make that decision, and we did, and we ripped the Band-Aid, and, thankfully it worked out. Our VP of sales, national sales trainer, the good thing about those individuals is, when we make a decision, we can disagree in the room, but the second we walk out, we are aligned and we are all about execution. And thankfully for that, we powered through it, and it was a lot of change, a lot of challenges, but if we didn't do that, we would have been, really burning too much cash, and it would have been a struggle to stay in business.
At the risk of taking of the time it would take for you to revamp to get to win that business as well. So you also had to find that gap, fill that gap between the two, between the sales and the rentals coming in. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Major challenge. I look back now and I think, man, I don't know how the heck I don't know how we're still in business. There was a lot of challenges early on. And I think, again, you look back and you're just, it's interesting because you tell war stories of things that went and happened. And there's some people that recognize, they're like, holy cow, like that's just crazy to think that you had to get through all that. And I think it's just, part of, the entrepreneurial mindset is, you don't have a choice. You're just going to fight through it. You're going to fight and find a way. And that's really a lot of what you can do. And the only thing you can do, you can't sit there and worry about it and overthink about it. Just fight and find a way and figure it out.
What do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about what entrepreneurship is for those people who come into it now?
I think probably the one thing that most people don't understand is how it never leaves you. And what I mean by that is, people, they think about being an entrepreneur and they're like, oh, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. I'm going to be in charge. And I think people don't truly understand until they're in it that, you never stop thinking about the business. It's not a clock in, clock out type situation. Even when you're on vacation, you never stop thinking about it, whether you're worrying about it or you're just thinking about decisions that need to be made and moves that need to be made. It's not for everyone. And I think that people need to understand, what is their level of emotional agility to be able to absorb that long term. And it's interesting. I never really thought about it until my wife started a coffee shop. And, for 2 years, 3 years now, she's been running a business, and she always says to me, why didn't you tell me? I can't ever stop thinking about this coffee shop. Why didn't you tell me that's what this was going to be like? And I never really thought about it until she really put it out there. But I think that's probably the biggest misconception is people need to be prepared for what that shift is like.
It's interesting that you bring that up about thinking all the time about it, because I was speaking with David Oak, co-founder of a company called ShopKeep, a point of sale system. And he was talking about how he couldn't do now what he did then, because when he was starting a company, he lived across the street from his business. He didn't have children. He was engaged, not married. Now he wants to be with his family. So I'm wondering, how do you compartmentalize it? How do you do that? So even though you're thinking about it all the time, you can still be present with your family.
Yeah, I think you used the right word, which is compartmentalize. I think you have to take approach of, when do I do certain things? And I think that's probably been, the biggest adjustment for me is just making sure that, when I walk in the door, I try and put my phone on the shelf, and truly just spend time with my family, because that's really important to me. And I think in general, I think with running a business, you have to find a way to compartmentalize in some capacity, right? I think it's really hard, but I do think that is exactly the right word, that you have to figure that out. Otherwise you will burn out eventually.
And when you think about your family and you think about your boys and their futures, and you think about your own background, you were talking about you didn't want to look back. Number one, you didn't want to look back and say, what if I should have done that? So, and that you were comfortable with risk. So is that something that that you grew up with? Is that, was that instilled in you early from your family?
Yeah, I think, what was probably instilled in me, I'm one of four boys, very competitive household. I'm the youngest, and my dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot. And I think, if I think about the things that were instilled in me the most was, one is, never let anybody outwork you. My dad, again, military, farm background, just very focused on, everything you want is on the other side of hard work, and just don't ever let anybody outwork you, whether it's work, whether you're playing a sport, whatever it is, just give everything you got. And I think that was instilled in me very quickly. And I think that has helped me for sure in terms of, just fighting through challenges as an entrepreneur. I think the other thing that was instilled in me, again, just being military brat, if you will, is, moving around and just having to adapt to situations quickly. You move to a new school and you got to make new friends, and you got to adapt to situations and get comfortable with the fact that you're not always going to be in control of every decision, and you just deal with it. And I think those are two things that, I learned early on. And I think those are two traits that have really helped me from an entrepreneurial standpoint. And if I think about traits that I would want my kids to receive as well. I mean, clearly the hard work, I think that's something I value probably beyond about anything. And I hope that they understand that. And I think if I think about what I want them to take from an entrepreneurial standpoint is, it's not for everybody. If you don't want to start your own business and you don't have the level of comfort with risk or putting yourself out there, that is fine. Don't feel like you have to do something that you're not prepared to do, and just, do something that you enjoy and that you really want to do, as an individual.
Would you embrace with open arms if all three boys said, we want to be entrepreneurs, we want to start our own businesses?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would do anything I could to help them. And I think you said it earlier in the conversation, I recognize that nobody does anything alone. Nobody is successful on their own for the most part. And I think, making sure they know that, hey, I would do anything I can to help them be successful in their own right, because you're going to need people. Every one of us needs someone, and in a lot of cases, a lot of people to have some level of success. So I would absolutely help them. I would hopefully be a little bit of a guide and a mentor for them, and do whatever I could to get them on their journey.
And how have you, as we now we turn it back to you and your experience, how are you able to be successful in surrounding yourself with good people who help lift you up?
Yeah, I think, one of the probably underappreciated traits, I think, of anybody who is either building a business is having the ability to capture the right talent around you, and I think that's something that I've gotten a lot better at over the years, is figuring out who I like to work with, but also making sure that I'm aligned and that I have people around me that, maybe complement my weaknesses, things that I'm not great at, making sure that, we have a full complement and a team. And I think that's something that, I've spent a lot of time, and we constantly are looking at not only just structure, but also who is the right candidate and what attributes do they have to come onto the team. I think building a team is probably one of the most important things anybody can do to run a business, is just make sure that you have the ability to find talent, cultivate talent, and keep talent around you.
What's the biggest misnomer about that team building based upon what you think is your experience?
I think one thing that I've learned is that, and especially for us as we've been a growing company, is that, as you put somebody in a position, they may not always be great in that position, and whether it's the company changes, the person changes, things change, and you got to be ready to adapt. And we've had a number of instances over the years where we've grown so rapidly, and we put someone in a position and we keep giving them more and more and more. And we expect that they're going to be able to grow at the same pace as the company. And it doesn't always happen. And I think being able to kind of respond to that the right way is really, really important. We've had a number of times over the years where someone's in a position and they do a great job. And then as we grow and they take on more responsibility, we recognize that, they've hit the cap of their capabilities and they're drowning a little bit or a lot of it in some cases. And we've got to course correct. And I think I see a lot of people make this mistake where they don't want to have that hard conversation and they don't want to kind of either reposition that person, and it ultimately hurts the company. And so I think if you take the approach and you communicate effectively and you've built trust that, hey, the company has this need and we're going to focus on what's the most important thing for the company, and your position may change and we all accept that, and things are going to change and we all have to accept the company comes first and then the individuals win. And if you build the right company and the right culture where everyone understands you got to leave your ego at the door, those conversations, they sting a little bit, but guess what? People get put in the right position. And then all of a sudden it's amazing. What happens is all of a sudden you just see this weight off their shoulders, because someone's in a position where they were failing and they knew it, but they couldn't admit to it. And they certainly don't want to give up, right? We build a company of fighters. No one wants to say, hey, I'm failing, I want to quit. But when you put them in the right position, they just kind of go, oh, thank God. And now I can go be successful and enjoy what I do. And I think that's just something that I've learned over the years that I think is really difficult for some people to capture and recognize when it's happening.
You were talking about failure and raising your hand if you're not good at something or it's not going as well as you'd like, or you might not necessarily be in the position that you're able to thrive in. And I'm wondering about before the 27% annual growth, there was the time that you were kind of just flatlined and not going anywhere. But you had clearly tons of self-confidence. There's no doubt there. You believed in yourself and you believed in what you were doing. But I was wondering if there was a time when you came home and you said, honey, I'm banging my head up against a wall. I don't know if we're going to make it, or, my thesis isn't playing out, in such words, or in other words, were there those moments? Was there a moment that you can recall?
I don't think so. And I think part of it is probably because of the team that we have, and I think it's amazing how whenever I even sense myself kind of getting into a little bit like, it's amazing how you just have others around you that energize you. And it just, and that's where I think, the idea of an entrepreneur or somebody doing something all on their own, it can be done, but man, it's so much easier when you got partners that are just there and it's like, okay, we're going to just keep fighting together. And it's just that energy just continues to rebound and grow. And so thankfully, no, I've never really felt to the point where I'm like, man, I don't think this is going to work. And a lot of that's just because we've got great people at our company that just re-energize and just keep fighting through together.
Pretty amazing considering you've been at it for 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I'm curious, because you've got that spirit in you, has being involved in the business and seeing all of its different iterations over the term it has it created other opportunities? Has it created other business lines or other products or other services that at first were not even anywhere on your radar screen?
Yeah, it has. And I think what it's done is we've gone through a couple different periods where, we almost brought on a new product line, or we added something to the company. And I think we've tested a few of those over the years. And quite honestly, what we've gotten to is just that, we have a very kind of niche product within Rehab Medical. And, again, I said we're in 17 states. There's a bunch more out there. The idea that we're going to add a bunch of ancillary products, I think all that's done is what we realized very quickly is it just took our focus off, and instead of trying to stay narrow and stay really good at what we do, it shifted a little bit and we recognized that was a mistake. And so we've made the firm decision that we're going to stay very focused on this product, on this business model, and really not add a lot of ancillary products to it, if at all any. In fact, we had actually purchased a wound care company and we ended up kind of divesting it. And so we still, there's still ownership of that company, but it's now through a holding company. And so we've just recognized that, we really want to have different businesses that are truly run separate as their own entity with their own focus, with their own mission and strategic plan. And so I think that's where we've just recognized that's what's allowed us to be successful, is not just adding too much and not turning the head too much. Just stay focused. Let's go.
And how do you fight off competition?
Our industry is very interesting in that regard. There's a couple of very large companies in our space that are private equity backed, and I think what we've created is a model that's very different than them. And so I think we compete with them, but quite honestly, I don't know that I focus much on competition. I really feel like for me, I'm not trying to steal market share. We're not in that kind of an environment. I'm almost just more focused on how do we go and grow the business. And I'd almost rather go out into areas where there is no competition or it's minimal competition, because I know we're really good at what we do. And I think if we just focus on what we do well, I'm just not as concerned or focused on the competitive nature of our industry.
Kind of at a crossroads. If you're not dealing with competition and you're not focused on market share, but you're getting this awesome growth. Is it from just greenfield opportunity? Where does it come from? Does it come from selling? You don't have multiple product lines, so you're not selling deeper into a relationship. So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's not that we don't have competition. I think I probably focus less of my energy on what is the competition doing and how do we outpace them, and more just on, hey, this is our model, this is how we execute, this is how we're going to approach it. We go out into new markets. I think there's a big segment of markets that we go into where we're a true sales company, and I think some of our competitors are not. They're more clinically focused and they're not going out into the areas we are because of that. And so I think we create a lot of our own opportunities because of the model that we have.
So you're a true sales. Can you tell me a little bit more of what you mean by that? You're a true sales business.
Yeah, I think in some in healthcare, I think this happens where you have folks that are they're probably waiting back and they're waiting for the business to come to them because they know there's a need for their services, and so they're almost just kind of waiting and saying, hey, we have a business, and if you need our services, we'll do it. Whereas for us, we have a really good approach in terms of getting out and educating on, hey, these are the types of patients that need this equipment. These are the qualifications that they have. And so for us, it's going out and meeting the need instead of waiting for it to come to us.
I feel very fortunate to have somebody who has 12 years of experience sitting with me and has learned and made a lot of mistakes along the way, but has thrived as a result. I'm wondering if you can reflect back and answer the question of, if I knew then what I know now, and fill in the blank.
Yeah, if I knew, well, I probably never would have taken the leap. No, I think, if I look back and I say, what are some things that I wish I knew then that I know now? I think, one of the things I've definitely learned is you don't get out of anything, and I think about this in terms of running a business and running into mistakes and trying to deal with them. And I think, for me, anytime I see a challenge or I see something that needs to change, I face it head on. And, I'm very direct about, hey, this is what I'm seeing and this is what I think we need to do. Whereas I think in the past, I probably would have either tried to be nice and not hurt someone's feelings because I'd be so focused on that aspect of it instead of, hey, what does the business need? And I think in terms of, I talked about, people being in the wrong positions. I think that's something where I recognize now how important that is, and how critical it is that the second you sense someone's in the wrong spot, that you address it. And it's not a matter of, I'm not cold or calculating where I don't care about people's feelings. I care about their feelings. And that's part of the reason why those things need to be addressed head on, because you don't get it. It's going to happen. It's going to become an issue, and you have to address it immediately. And the sooner you address it, the sooner that individual feels better, the sooner the company is going to perform better. And again, it all comes with starting with a level of trust. You can't have those conversations until you've built up a level of trust and you have a culture where they know that no matter what, I'm focused on the company first, because, without the company, we don't have anything else, no money, no mission. Right. And everyone has to buy into that and be a part of that. And so I think that, the sooner you realize that you don't get out of anything, and that, things are going to be hard and you got to face them head on. I think you just get there quicker. And I think that's one thing that it's taken me a while to understand that, but I definitely feel that way now.
What does that saying mean? No money, no mission?
No money, no mission. I say that because we're in healthcare and our mission is to improve lives. And, we're really focused on improving the lives of our patients, but also the improving the lives of our employees. And I think sometimes people think, well, you're in healthcare, and so they shy away from conversations about profit and being a profitable organization. for me, I never shy away from that because we have to make money. If we don't make money, we can't improve lives. So no money, no mission. We have to make money. We got to generate a profit. We got to use that money to make sure that we're continuing to be a going concern and focus on what we're ultimately trying to accomplish. And again, there's another thing I've just learned that sometimes people want to shy away from being honest about what we're trying to do. And hey, what are we trying to do? Go back to that cause, and it's a lot easier to have those conversations.
So how do you deal with the stress of having an organization of 600 people, who you are responsible for their livelihoods?
Yeah. Well, we all have stress, right, Greg? I mean, it's finding the stress that you're fine with and that you can manage. Sure, I get stressed, but there's things that I get stressed about that I enjoy working on. The things that I get stressed on that I enjoy working on, those are challenges, and that's what keeps me moving. The stress I don't like, I would say try and find somebody who does like that stress and delegate it to them and figure out how they can manage it. But I think, it kind of goes back to what you said earlier in the conversation is just, figure out how to compartmentalize things. I think that goes with stress too. How do you compartmentalize it? How do you put it in its right spot? And then again, things that you don't like dealing with, find somebody who does like dealing with it, who that's the stress that they like to manage. And then build a team and make sure you get the right people on the bus.
And words of advice about failure, because we keep on hearing from founders, look, it's good to fail, right? Einstein had, 1,000, products, creations, inventions before he got the right one, and fail forward. And, failure is great, right? But failure really sucks in the moment. I don't know. Tell me about your,
Yeah, I am absolutely in the opposite camp. I hear all these people say, oh, failure's great. No, it's not. Failure's terrible. I hate it. It's never good, right? It's, and people that like to try and make a big thing out of it. No, we love to fail fast. Failure's great. No, it's not. It's terrible. It's horrible. And there are failure points that if you catch the wrong one, you are done. And so I'm not a proponent of, I love failure. I hate failure. I think for me, it's just try and figure out how to manage it. Try and figure out that there's some level of you got to take the emotion out, and that goes with success and failure. And I'm just a big proponent that don't let your lows get too low, and don't let your highs get too high. It's you can't help but be on somewhat of an emotional roller coaster when you're running a business, and you just got to figure out how do I try and keep it somewhat smooth, without letting those failures break me. I think that's really the most important thing for me personally.
I think that takes time and experience. It's the only way, especially if you're saying that whenever your eyes are open, you're thinking, or even when your eyes are closed, you're thinking about your business. To not be, so emotionally invested, it sounds very hard to detach.
Yeah, it is really hard. And I think that's where, any recommendation I would give to someone who's looking at, starting a business is, I think just a fair amount of self-reflection of, how would you deal with that? Because I'll go back to saying it again, it's not for everybody. And so understanding your emotional, kind of wherewithal to say, hey, what can I handle? What is my risk level? I think truly that's probably the most important thing that I would recommend someone assess about themselves before they jump into starting a business or buying a business.
And as we wrap up, I want to give you the opportunity to just mention anything that you think we may have missed, or you'd like people to know. I'm incredibly appreciative of the time that you've given us. I love the fact that we met in Bar Harbor, Maine, and just put it out in the universe that I had a podcast, and sure enough, I meet you and learn about your business, and so just want to give you the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, I think I love that story because I think it's just, it's paramount to my approach, which is, never shy away from a random opportunity, right? We just happen to meet each other and we're talking and you say, hey, I do this. Great. Here's my contact information. I think you never know when an opportunity is going to present itself. And so I think just in general, being prepared and being open and, just being ready to live life. I think that's very important for anybody in general.
If you approach that and say, look, opportunities everywhere, how do you make sure that you allocate the right amount of time that you don't end up chasing the next shiny object?
Yeah, that's a great comment. I would say that you got to get used to saying no a lot and know what's important to you. I think that's probably, we talk about, time being the most valuable resource we have. I think and especially in today's day and age where you have LinkedIn and Twitter and, a million ways that people can reach out to you and try and, spend some time with you. I think that is a really important thing, is understanding what you're willing to do, and where you're either going to add value for yourself or add value to someone else and say, hey, that's worthwhile. I think learning to say no is definitely something that's taken me a long time to get there. Because early on in your career, you're like yes to everything, right? And that's what gets you opportunities. Later on in your career, you go, I got to say no to everything because I have limited time that I have to invest in what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, I appreciate you saying yes. This has been wonderful, Kevin. I'm really glad that we were able to carve out this time, and I wanted to wish you and the company just the utmost continued success.
Greg, I appreciate that, and again, thank you for your time, man. It's been good.
It's been great. Thanks so much, Kevin.